Los Angeles, California, at the home of the incredible Ora Nadrich, who is a new friend, but also a thought leader. And I'm so excited to share her latest book with you today, which is Time to Awaken. Welcome, Ms. Nadrich, I beg your pardon.
Hi, Naomi. I'm so glad to be here with you.
I'm so glad to be with you. And those of you who already know Ms. Nadrich's work don't need the introduction, but those of you who are new to it, you should know that she's a pioneering mindfulness expert, and she's the founder and president of the Institute for Transformational Thinking, a sought-after expert in the fields of mindfulness and self-discovery. She popularized a highly effective Says Who method, which helps her clients identify what their personal missions are and engage in profound personal transformation. She's also a very prolific author, and I really admire her innovativeness as an independent author. She's the author of Says Who, One Simple Question Can Change the Way You Think Forever, and Live True, a mindfulness guide to authenticity, which was named one of the 100 best mindfulness books of all time. Pretty amazing by Book Authority. She's been featured in Thrive Global, Fast Company, NBC News, Women's Health Magazine, Reader's Digest, Psychology Today, Yahoo Health, Success Magazine, and many others. She often contributes to the Huffington Post and is one of their leading global mindfulness experts. She and her book, Mindfulness and Mysticism, with a foreword by His Holiness, the 14th Dalai Lama, were featured on KTLA News. So what an amazing set of accomplishments. And I guess the first thing I would say is that I'm especially interested in speaking with you because this book is about this moment. Mm-hmm. And it's an incredible fast read. It's incredibly gripping and important, but it's also kind of historic, I feel, because it's the first, to my mind, the first book from the kind of mindfulness and spirituality community to address the pandemic and the wave of fear that hit the world. So please start by telling us what your main message is here. And then I want to ask you why it's the first book from that community to address this moment.
Well, the main message really is, as a mindfulness practitioner, is to really propose the idea of how what I've observed over the last 2.5 years is that there was a lack of awareness, whether that was unknowing to someone or deliberate. It's, not wanting to know something. It's a lot easier sometimes not to know something than to know the hard truths, which can be really upsetting and depressing. And I think it's fair to say that the last 2.5 years have been that.
Indeed.
So yes. I think a lot of people, their go-to is, I don't want to look at that. Right. I don't want to see that. Well, the practice of mindfulness is being in the present moment with total awareness.
Right.
So you are aware of what's happening. There is no denial.
Right.
There is no pretending, as uncomfortable as it may be.
Right.
So I want to use that as sort of my guide into how something like, you could take something, whether you subscribe to it or not, like a mass formation psychosis, the Malone and Matthias Desmet perception of what went on in the last 2 years, that people just go into this complete collective denial. So with mindfulness, you can't.
Right.
Mindfulness keeps you too present. You can't go into denial.
God. I mean, I have to say, denial sounds really good in the last 2.5 years, but I understand the dangers. I mean, this book starts out addressing the pandemic specifically.
Right.
And you make the case, which is really stunning and important, that the world is kind of divided into two groups right now. People who are in a deep slumber and don't want to be awake, and who are gripped by fear since 2020, and those of us who are awake, as miserably uncomfortable as it is.
Yes,
I admire your willingness to just look right at it, but sometimes I'm like, I just want a martini. I don't want to look at this anymore. So talk to me about why you believe that, what led you to believe that the world since 2020 has been divided into groups of people who are asleep or in a deep slumber and don't want to wake up, and people who are awake.
I mean, I don't know if we have the exact answer as to from individual to individual as to why. Is it a choice? Is it that they really just don't have the awareness? Is it a cognitive dissonance? Is it denial? Is it that they're just not good critical thinkers? I mean, one could go on and on and sort of just think about why they don't see what we see.
Right.
You know, somebody at the event that I had last night said she looked at it from a more spiritual point of view, that it is perhaps divine guidance that we see what we see and others don't.
Wow.
Do you know what I mean?
Oh my God, what an interesting idea that
Yeah.
we're not all processing the same
Yes.
world.
Rather than constantly
Wow.
for us to say, how can you not see what I see?
Right. And they say the same thing.
Exactly. Right. So we're mirroring the same thing, and we're on two different, I call it like we're living in a parallel universe.
Wow.
But it's deeper than that. We really can't, we can understand some of the reasons why perhaps someone doesn't want to lose their job. They don't want to lose their livelihood. They have to put food on the table. There's a myriad of reasons why they may think certain things, but they don't want to admit to it. And then there are those that flat out, I could say to them, you know, gee, there's so many things about what happened over the last 2.5 years that just don't make sense to me.
Right.
Does it make sense to you, to be a good dot connector? And they're like, what dots?
Holy cow.
And that's genuinely how they feel.
Right.
They do not see a sort of connection here to the events that we questioned from the onset that they never did.
Right. I understand. Well, from a mindfulness perspective, I guess let's get into what mindfulness means. Would you define it for people who are really unfamiliar with this world?
Mindfulness is an inherent quality that we all have, and that is to be more mindful. Let's just use the word. Well, what does mindful mean? I'm more aware. I'm more present. I'm here with you in this conversation, and we're present with each other. I'm not thinking about what I'm going to do 2 hours from now. I'm not lamenting what happened yesterday. I'm present in the moment of which I'm in. And I'm present enough to be aware and cognizant of what is happening in the moment that I am in.
Right.
So that I can see exactly what is occurring. I'm not projecting onto the moment something that I need to have happen. I'm accepting the moment for what it is.
Well, I guess what I would say is that, sitting in a mindfulness retreat, which I've been to pre-2019, is pretty great because you're mindful of, this wonderful cup of tea, the beautiful, pine trees and the scent of the pine trees, and you're in a stable, free society. Whereas the danger, or what I really want to drill into, is that to be mindful in 2022, and those who are watching, we are aligned, and Ora and her wonderful husband Jeff hosted a fantastic event last night for Children's Health Defense, at which Ed Dowd, the former hedge fund investor from BlackRock, formerly from BlackRock, and Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the founder of CHD and the advocate for children's health, spoke. So Ora sees a global attack on humanity. I mean, you pretty much spell that out in this book.
Yes, very much
right?
so. Yeah.
So it's not surprise. So it's very difficult to be present to take that in, right? It's very tempting to be in denial. I wish I had the kind of mind that could manage it. How do you? Well, I guess what I'm asking now is, are there some things from a mindfulness perspective that are too horrible to process?
Well, yes. I mean, it's very difficult to be in the present moment and entertain the possibility that there are things that are happening that are extremely disruptive, especially in a world where you feel you can just everything away. And I don't say that, in a way that disparages the spiritual community. But I think that if you really are somebody who advocates mindfulness, peacefulness, equanimity, it's not an easy pill to swallow to think that what's happening out in the world that is very harsh and dark and disturbing and distressing can really penetrate that environment, that it really is about peace and harmony.
Right.
I almost feel that a lot of that is a type of spiritual bypassing.
Interesting.
Because you're not wanting to really look at the other aspects of human nature.
Right.
What is going on in the world?
Right.
It's just easier. This has been disruptive. A lot of people would rather not know what's going on than to know it. And it's interesting that it's in the spiritual community as much as it is.
Yeah.
That's
I really want to get there. I
yeah.
really want to get there. Well, so do you then think, and this is kind of thinking about your argument kind of side by side with Matthias Desmet's theory of mass formation psychosis, which really, respectfully, as a female writer, is really just kind of an update and repackaging, respectfully, of Hannah Arendt's The Origins of Totalitarianism.
Right.
But and then Dr. Malone added the word psychosis,
Yes.
which is contested.
I think Matthias Desmet called it mass formation trance.
Do you feel, from a mindfulness perspective, which is different from Western psychology and psychoanalysis, that the painfulness of reality right now, or the fact that humanity is under attack, that people are trying to kill us on a mass scale, there's no way around that, is so disorienting that the kind of cognitive problems that people who don't want to look at it are having have to do with that denial? Like, we've all been traumatized, and they're like in the middle of the trauma, like a lot of trauma, survivors, they're like, they've left their body,
There's like a disconnect.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, what's the mechanism that you see for this kind of problem processing where we're at, seeing what's obvious, the strangely blind acceptance of more and more injections, following scientists and agencies who have lied to us, without question, believing everything certain media tell them? Is that a result of denial?
I think, yes, but I think to start with that is that I think there are a lot of people, nice, good people, who genuinely feel they were doing the right thing, that they were getting immunized with this experimental genetic, whatever it is, Frankenstein shot, and that they were doing it so that they could protect their clients, their loved ones, their coworkers. So, and I know some of those people, as I'm sure you do.
Right.
So I think that they genuinely thought they were doing the right thing, because that was what was being sold to us.
Sure.
We know it grew from there. It became way more sinister, way more dark and suspect along the way. Well, at that point, they had already signed on.
Right.
They had already, the starting point was, I'm doing what I think is the right thing to protect, grandma and everybody else. So I think that was their decision.
Right.
What came after that, even when you have the information that comes out of the myocarditis, of the injuries, of the deaths, which aren't they unprecedented? I think a lot of them still have to hold on to the belief that, well, I believe I did the right thing.
Right. Interesting. But so unlike reasoning in the past, right?
Yeah, I think when you've committed to that mindset, or you've signed on for that narrative or ideology, it's very hard to question it along the way. Look what comes up with that. There's a lot of having to be accountable, having to be responsible for a decision that you made, that you believed in an authority figure, our government, our health organizations, to tell us what to do. And then maybe perhaps you did it so that you could maintain a livelihood. And what if it was the wrong thing to do? I'm not seeing a lot of people admitting that. That's a whole other bag of worms. Why is it hard to admit that perhaps you made a decision that you wish you hadn't? And you're still defending it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Emily Oster, an Atlantic magazine commentator, wrote a piece that got a lot of attention, basically calling for amnesty for all the horrors that were committed against the unvaccinated, all the things we did in the pandemic.
And she was still promoting vaccinations, by the way, in that article.
Totally. I guess what I want to ask you, again, from a spiritual perspective, because we rarely get a chance to talk to someone who's not, a doctor, a scientist, a politician. What damage does it do one's soul or one's consciousness to ask for forgiveness without accountability, or to receive forgiveness without it? Okay, let's just brush it under the rug. Let's just move on. What's the harm of that from a Buddhist or from a mindfulness perspective?
I definitely think, I know that there's so many of us that feel that it was absolutely horrible and egregious what we went through, being vilified, being estranged and ostracized, our own loved ones who thought we were crazy. We brought that up earlier. I do think that her article in particular, which I found rather arrogant.
Yeah.
Is this sort of like, let's just wrap this up in a nice little pretty bow, and or that, well, we just didn't know.
Right.
You know, which
Right.
to me seems very much a cop out.
Right.
And I think that from a mindfulness perspective to what you're asking me, I think one has to take responsibility and really be with that. You know, really sit with what were the decisions that were made by them, why they made it, why they vilified others, what were their acts of unkindness, unmindfulness, not having compassion. For someone who made decisions because they believed in bodily autonomy or their right to choose or to have informed consent, why did they go against them the way in which they did, which was anything but mindful?
Right, right.
Do you know, we were under tremendous attack.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So basically part of mindfulness is facing yourself. It sounds like you're saying.
Completely.
Yeah, that is mindfulness.
It's inescapable.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
It starts with facing yourself. You know, first and foremost, to face yourself, go within. Be with yourself. Who am I? Why did I do that? Why did I rush to judgment? Why am I judging others? I mean, hold yourself accountable.
Right. And then what would be an appropriate, from a mindfulness or Buddhist, I don't know what you prefer, perspective, what is the right thing for someone like Emily Oster, someone who hurt others by ostracizing, after reflecting on herself, what should she do?
And angered people would.
Right.
I would love to have her here right now and say, and maybe
Right.
she would still defend her article.
Right, right.
And maybe she would say, everything I wrote is everything I believe. And we didn't know. And by the way, I still believe in vaccines. Right. And I don't think I need to apologize. Right. I'm sure there are a lot of people that.
What would you say to a genuine seeker who's hurt others? That the right, you know, what should follow from a mindfulness perspective, the harming of others, the ostracizing of others?
To really, really go deep in a contemplative way as to why was the behavior of someone who acted unkind and judgmental to somebody who really believed, as I said, in bodily autonomy.
Right.
To explore their own humanity, to explore something within themselves that made them very reactive, made them go into judgment mode. And what did they learn from those behaviors?
Right.
It's all about the learning and the evolving, in my opinion.
Right.
So what have they learned from it, if anything?
Should they apologize? Is that part of mindfulness practice?
I feel so.
Eightfold Path.
And I don't mean a half-hearted apology or to feel obligated that they have to so we can get on with it.
Right, right.
I'd like to know what Emily has learned from that and why she feels it's okay to just, go into this amnesty mindset about this and that we can move past it.
Right.
We mustn't move past things without really addressing what caused the behaviors that we did and inflicted great harm on one another and learn nothing from it.
I hear you. Well, now let's go back to the central argument of your book. You make the case that humanity is under attack, and I agree with you. And you and I had a very deep conversation last night that I'd like to bring to our audience. I want to ask you, why is it under attack, and what's the spiritual dimension? Is this like a cosmic battle between good and evil? Has a portal to hell opened up? Negative energies are
probably all of the above.
But how do you see this?
It's interesting. What came to me, at the very beginning of this, when I realized at the onset of it that something was terribly wrong, and a lot of things didn't make sense. But what came to me, what can also be called just, divine guidance, a download, a lot of people feel they get that, is that I kept saying, this is more than just a virus, a novel virus. This is a period of a great awakening.
Oh, wow. So this is what's so amazing about this book. I am super depressed about the state of the world and consciousness, and you see what's happening as ultimately a positive thing and part of the great awakening.
Yes.
Talk more about that.
I do. And I explored that, and I thought, great awakening, why is that coming to me? Why is that in the front of my psyche here? And as we know, there have been great awakenings throughout history. And my research of that was oftentimes they were religious revivals when religion really wasn't working for people anymore, and they wanted something more. Right. So we have an opportunity now to really go deeper into what are our values?
Mhm.
Are a lot of these systems and constructs, do they work for us anymore?
Mhm.
How are we evolving on the planet?
Right.
Where do we want to see this go? For me personally, when I hear things, and we can go into that whole area, which I talk about extensively in the book, something that the World Economic Forum or Klaus Schwab calls the New World Order. I mean, just the word order, like, yeah, exactly. What does that make you feel when you think of, a new world is coming that is being ordered by those that think that our destiny should be fulfilled in a way that others dictate?
Exactly. It's their order.
It's their order.
It's not our order.
It's not my. That's not my idea of how I want my destiny to be.
Right.
Do you know? And
Absolutely.
I think that when I explored the book and I went into the areas of transhumanism, which I found very disturbing. I get it. We're in the future.
Right.
We're at a time of artificial intelligence. But when I read up on this and I saw how unspiritual it was, and it was very soulless. And whether you believe in transhumanism, whether you believe in God or not. I mean, I read Ray Kurzweil's book, The Singularity, which I wanted to throw across the room.
Explain to people what that is if they're not familiar with it, please.
Ray Kurzweil is a Google engineer who's a big believer in transhumanism, which really is this sort of transcending our biological form and becoming supercomputers. In that this can get very complicated, and I suggest people do a deep dive into transhumanism and find out about AI and what is this desire to move us into these robotic, soulless, computer-esque type of people, or you've got the metaverse, you've got these fantasies, these sort of futuristic fantasies that are very about not being human anymore. And it's very godless. And whether you're a religious person or believe in God or not, the vision for that for me felt anything but spiritual.
Right.
And it was disturbing.
Oh, it's anti-spiritual,
It's
right?
and ultimately anti-life.
Anti-life, anti-humanity.
Anti-humanity.
Yeah.
So when you start to really link this together, it's a very large tapestry here that's going on.
So again,
and going back, Naomi, to what you said, I do believe we're in the midst of a battle of sorts. One could call it a spiritual battle between the light and the dark, battle between the spiritual and the transhumanist, a battle you can call it what it is, but a lot is being played out on the life stage here for us to figure out. It's really incumbent upon each and every one of us to figure out what we're doing here. And that takes us into the deeper, more contemplative, existential conversations to have with ourselves of what the hell are we doing here? And how do we see ourselves moving forward into the future of this world?
Right. I mean, one of the things I so admire about this book is that you actually looked at movements like transhumanism. And, it's so, I'm so wanting to dismiss that as a conspiracy theory, but it really exists. It's got its thought leaders, it's got its industries.
And it's penetrated a lot of the areas like, Google and, I know Elon Musk. I really can't get a clear read on Elon Musk, but a lot of these sort of aforementioned men that are the usual suspects right now that seem to have quite a lot of power and feel very comfortable telling us where our future is going. Subscribe to these beliefs.
That's right. So let me push a little bit into that because you're giving me like inspiration and courage to face things I really have such aversion to. They're so hard to look at, for me. In this transhumanist future, which is now, like you said that last night, it really shook me because you're right, the future is now, right?
It is. What is that great quote that Einstein said? Something like, I don't worry about the future because it's already here.
It's already here. But in, what they want more than anything is the end of free will, right? In human beings, and also free assembly, freedom of thought, but like Neuralink, right? The brain chipping, the propaganda, the smart cities that track every move.
Yes.
The Buddhist premise and the humanist premise is that human beings can evolve only through free will and free thought.
Absolutely.
So if literally these bad guys' technologies will make it impossible for us to have free will.
Right.
One example I gave you is I did this essay on how the lipid nanoparticles traverse the blood-brain barrier and are causing brain damage and affecting people's thinking. How can we hope to have a great awakening? How can we hope to even know how to fight back if the vision of the future of these transhumanists is so intrusive and controlling of even the ability to think, let alone the ability to move?
Mm-hmm.
Right? They'll know if we're having a yearning toward God, and they'll switch off the God channel on their remote with our brain attached to it. Right? I mean,
yeah.
Why are you so
perhaps
hopeful?
We should ask Mark Zuckerberg's new robot Jarvis, who he considers his intellectual equal. Maybe he has the answer to that.
Gosh, but truly, just as a person listening, how are we going to fight this?
I've thought about this, Naomi, in ways in which I really wanted to entertain, because I think it's important for us to really look at it from all angles. Mm-hmm. That, okay, let's just entertain that we're moving towards this sort of Blade Runner reality.
Right.
That our technologies are advancing so exponentially, and that's just inevitable.
Right.
And that we see less human beings in places of business. Mm-hmm. And even this new robot called Flippy, who's in 100 fast food restaurants that they claim flips burgers faster than humans.
Right.
So if I could just really be sort of an observer of this reality and say, okay, so the future, this is what it's going to look like.
Right.
But I don't see a lot of benevolence in this vision.
No.
It seems very dark to me. So I don't understand. I mean, if these people who feel they want to usher in this new world order, if there was a lot of benevolence behind it, and goodness and kindness and soulfulness and all the things that spiritual people resonate to, then maybe we would look at it very differently. But it's the darkness of this vision that's deeply disturbing. Mm-hmm. And things like the tyrannical motivations and the need to control. What is this need to control?
Right. Well, it's nice for them. They're going to be on their ranches in New Zealand while the rest of us are
eating
crickets and being ordered around by Flippy. Right?
But one more burger, Flippy. Maybe we might end up liking Flippy. I don't know. We don't have to go into the kitchen.
But let me ask you again, not to press, but you have so many answers, and I need them, and a lot of people watching need them. Why, given how dark their vision is and how comprehensively they're deploying it, why does this book have such a hopeful second half? Awaken to the shadow, resisting the singularity. I mean, you really tell us what to do.
Well,
it is up to us.
It's hopeful. It's hopeful. It is hopeful, but it's also very much about, we really do need to address things like our own personal shadows. I do believe that a lot of the great horrors of our humanity have been caused by the lack of self-awareness.
Interesting.
And you can just go through history over and over again and see how those atrocities and horrors took place.
But what if you ultimately believe that if collectively we awaken to our Buddha nature, to love, to humanity, to kindness, to honesty, to transparency, that collectively the forces of darkness cannot overcome us? Is this true?
I would like to believe that. Mm-hmm. I would, and I think that therein lies the rub. I think we're really very much ensconced in this battle between those that really believe that we could create heaven on earth. And I don't say this in sort of some unicorny, kind of airy-fairy way, to those that feel that being human is messy.
Right.
A lot of these futurists and these transhumanists really do, we're imperfect beings, and God was imperfect and made us imperfect. We get sick, we die. We age, we die. Let's just all be, in Ray Kurzweil's words, spiritual computers, and live forever in the cloud. Do you know? That is really very sexy to these guys. And it's horrific.
Sociopaths.
It sounds like the most dystopian horror sci-fi reality that we can possibly envision.
So one of your chapters talks about the signs of awakening that you see. Tell me where you see signs of awakening.
I think the signs of awakening, and I do think that there are many of us that are experiencing that, and that for many of us, this period really had people get more connected to their spirituality, which that gives me hope.
Right.
Do you know, where they are fighting for what they believe in for our humanity, I being one of them, which is why I wrote this book.
Right.
In that, deep in my heart, I know that the vision for our future life is not about the things that seems very dystopian. And I think that more and more people are waking up to that and honoring that we are actually free, sovereign human beings. Why in the world would we let anybody have power over us and control us? But if we don't resist something like the singularity, which is, or Neuralink or microchipping, and you know, I know still people just don't even know what the hell we're talking about. Do you know?
A lot of people watching this will, though. These are
that you know, when I talk to you and I connect, which is really the beautiful thing about mindfulness, is it teaches you to go somewhere deep within. And you know, there's, you know, it almost feels, you know, we can speak of things in a biblical context. It's easy to read a Bible and draw your spirituality or your religious connection to God or divine presence that way. Now's the time to connect to something deeper within us. And that's what I really propose. To go deeper within and to ask yourself, what do I see for a future world?
And what do I want?
And what do I want? And that touches my heart when I think about that.
So important. And it sounds like, and one of the most valuable things I took so far from this book is your kind of recipe for overcoming fear, because I confess I'm in a state of fear that's acute.
Well, we talked about that last night, and I in my introduction last night was I went into the 7 stages of fear, the Elizabeth Kubler-Ross stages of fear of grieving, because haven't we been grieving? Grieving of a world that it feels robbed of us.
Exactly. You know? It's so true.
And fear is the number one thing that keeps you frozen in going along with these programs. Do you know?
Yeah.
Fear is not where you want to be.
And so you give the reader practical tips for overcoming
Absolutely.
fear.
I mean, fear is real, and we have every right to feel fear when we read about these very powerful, you know, global elites and billionaires who, like, you know, the Bill Gates and the, you know, Klaus Schwabs and all of these people who seem to, again, feel they have a right to decide what our future is. We fear that this could very well happen. I'm with you. Yeah. Do you know, especially when AI, you know, the train has left the station.
It has.
This advanced technology exists. It's who's behind this advanced technology that worries me more. I'm more worried about who's behind Flippy than Flippy.
Absolutely. Flippy is neutral or benign if it's deployed with love and pro-humanity. Exactly. Well, now let's talk about, and this is really my last set of questions, and maybe the most controversial. You know, this is kind of a departure for you. Your other wonderful books that are, you know, very well received in the mindfulness community don't touch the pandemic, don't touch a globalist attack on humanity, don't touch the issue of medical freedom and consent. And this does, and I think it's very, very, very brave for you coming from that community to address that. I've been super disappointed in my beloved friends and other people I won't name who are close to me from the Buddhist community, from the mindfulness community, from the emotional intelligence community, who have, you know, who have ostracized, who have judged, who have closed their eyes to actual science, and suspended critical thinking. And there's been a silence. I mean, that's why I started out this broadcast saying, this is the first spiritual book to address.
Know any of my colleagues and cohorts who've written.
Christians have been addressing it. Maybe Orthodox Jews have been addressing it, but the kind of mindfulness community.
I don't know
crickets.
anybody. No, I don't know anybody in the mindfulness community that I personally know of that has come forward and proposed these questions.
So talk to me about the fact, I'll just say it, the Omega Institute won't let people visit for their retreats if they're not vaccinated.
That's right. I was scheduled to teach there. And it's my understanding, I believe I'm correct, that, I'm not trying to, vilify these organizations that bring in speakers, speakers who speak of spirituality,
right?
Speakers who speak of higher consciousness, these very subjects,
right,
that are supposed to have their origins in spiritual awareness,
right?
And places like Esalen, I understand, these spiritual retreat centers are requiring that you have to be vaccinated to teach there.
Excellent, where the mindfulness movement began in America.
Now, I don't know if it's a liable concern that if somebody gets COVID while they're there, they're going to sue them. I don't know. But it's very curious to me why that's an absolute must in order to teach there or to go there.
Right. Well, it's surreal. So talk to me about your own experience or observation of the mindfulness community in relationship to ostracizing the vaccinated, shunning the vaccinated, wholly, taking in the willingness to do something experimental with their bodies when these are the same people who are vegans or, don't buy non-cage-free eggs and so on, or suspicious of pharma in other ways.
And there are a lot of them.
Yeah.
And many of them posted things on social media that I found were very aggressive, very non-accepting, very non-mindful.
What's an example of that?
Of going on social media and actively criticizing, and I won't name names because some of them I know very well, and they're very popular in the wellness field, that, they were the first to roll up their sleeves and proudly, show off their vaccination and really reprimand those that weren't doing that.
Right.
What is spiritually mindful about that?
Exactly. And haven't there been like many, many, many yoga retreats, yoga classes that were masked, which blows my mind because yoga is explained prana to the West, right?
And you can breathe really well with those masks. You can do deep pranic breathing when you've got those masks on. It defies logic. It really does. And for me, I view that as spiritual bypassing.
Right.
To use your spirituality in the name of thinking you're more righteous. And it's such a sort of twisted take on you're being spiritual by caring about someone else, by getting the shot so that you can protect them. But I don't believe that's a genuine intention at all.
No, and by now, even the CDC admits that it doesn't affect transmission. And
judgment. One of the definitions of mindfulness is being in the present moment with total awareness, acceptance, and non-judgment.
Right.
That is one of the basic tenets of mindfulness.
Right. Exactly.
And there's so much judgment within that community.
What are some other examples? People just saying judgmentally, oh, the unvaccinated are stupid or unscientific.
Absolutely. Or probably wouldn't even accept the fact that maybe many unvaccinated people are highly spiritual people.
Right.
To be able to share those, sort of precious words within the spiritual community.
Right.
Like, what is this, a spiritual competition? And because you got vaccinated and I'm not, you're more spiritual than me? That's ridiculous.
Is that really the form that
I think there's a lot? Again, it goes back to the woman who wrote the article in the Atlantic. I think it's just arrogance,
right,
and coupled with ignorance.
Right. Well, that's really disappointing.
It's very disappointing.
I just keep thinking of these people whom I know and have always respected so much, and imagining, what if Omega didn't let gay people come? What if they didn't let African Americans come?
Exactly.
That community would be up in arms, and they should.
Right.
And yet, very ugly things like discrimination,
it's
like
complete
judgment,
discrimination and judgment
are okay in this community.
That's right.
Now.
Yeah, it completely is very hypocritical. And again, I want to emphasize that I view it as complete spiritual bypassing.
Right. What do you mean by that?
Using your spirituality or your positions in the spiritual community, be it the area of yoga, mindfulness, whatever, but you're really avoiding looking at the realities of life, which haven't we been faced with that?
Mm-hmm.
And use spirituality as a way out of it.
Right.
So
I see. Interesting. So to use spirituality as kind of a cheap way to step around a problem.
Yes.
I get it. Interesting.
Yeah. And the argument would be that they are in fact being spiritual
mm-hmm.
by caring about the well-being of others, caring the well-being of others by judging them for making a decision for what they felt was their own wellness and well-being.
Shocking.
They don't have a corner on wellness and well-being.
Well, and especially now, I keep thinking about how surreal it is that there's this whole discourse of vaccinating yourself to care about others, when even the CDC now admits that was always a lie. Even the testimony of Pfizer's
I don't think any of that matters anymore, because they've bought into, as I said from the very onset, into a belief system and an ideology that they are doing the right thing, which is almost a holier than thou type of mindset, which is disturbing.
Yeah.
To think that we could argue till the cows come home about that their decision to vaccinate is a more noble decision.
Mm-hmm.
It is a more conscious decision.
You're saying we could argue about that.
They might even feel it is a more spiritual decision. And those that chose not to vaccinate are doing that without any of those things.
Mm-hmm.
They're not as spiritual as they are. Do you know what I'm saying? When you think you're doing the right thing, and that's what was sold to us from the onset. Right. It's a lot of...
These are supposed to be the critical thinkers.
Well, I guess not.
And the acceptors and the we are all one-ers, right? The non-dividers, it's non-duality, right?
Right, exactly. And it's proven to be anything but that. Right. And I'm not saying everybody in these communities, but it's very split down the middle, and it's very sad to see. And that's in a lot of communities.
Right, absolutely. I know.
It's in the medical world.
I know.
You know that.
I know, but Ora, for some reason,
but in this wellness field, how about just taking the word wellness?
Right.
As all the research you've done on these nanoparticles and what do we even call this shot at this point? What is it?
Well,
is there anything about wellness in it?
I mean, to me, I have nightmares, and I've said this before. Many of the doctors, and I really respect them, are really worried about the spike protein, and I have nightmares about the lipid nanoparticles, because they kind of dissolve you internally. I mean, that's kind of
I believe that.
They go through every membrane. What does that mean? You have your membranes for a reason. You have, you have membranes around a baby, in utero for a reason. You have, like every part of your body has its integrity for a reason.
Right.
And to me, this multiple injection, I don't mean to detour into the physical, but it's kind of related. This multiple injection each time is destabilizing the integrity of the body. I have nightmares about all these young adults with joint pain and joint replacements, shoulder replacements, knee pain.
Absolutely.
Right?
And I'm hearing stories of that from a lot of people, from other health practitioners, from, people that teach, that, are trainers, people that are massage therapists, people that are healers, and seeing so much illness and a deterioration of the physical and mental body. And mostly what I ask them is, do they connect it to the vaccine? And they say no.
No, exactly. Well, I feel privileged and cursed, because I am one of the few people who's seen the Pfizer documents, in detail, and along with our 3,500 experts and Amy Kelly, the project director. And this number one side effect is joint pain, or it's number two after muscle pain. And
I'm hearing a lot of, even my acupuncturist, I asked him originally, what are people complaining about? And that's one of the things he said.
Muscle pain as well as
joint pain, inflammation.
Inflammation, of course.
Which causes that.
Right. And then when you think about the fact that lipid nanoparticles destabilize membranes, like, of course your joints are going to have a problem.
I mean, I
right?
think there's a myriad of stories. I have a very dear friend whose daughter was married to the man of her dreams, a young woman of 32. And he got vaccinated. I think he got a booster. He got COVID. And I know if you speak to Dr. Malone and Dr. McCullough, that's a recipe for tremendous disaster, where the spike protein and the injection. And he got myocarditis and he died in her arms.
Oh, God.
And she is beyond heartbroken. And when I asked her, I said, did he have myocarditis?
Right.
And she sent me back an emoji with, like, the smoke coming out of, there's an emoji where there's smoke coming out of it. And that's what killed him. Of course. I don't care what anybody says.
Remember,
there's a point
3 years ago, this never happened.
No.
Young people didn't drop dead 3 years ago. Young men didn't have heart inflammation 3 years ago.
Yes.
Well, moving to my, I guess, last question on a happier subject. What would you like people watching to take away for how today, in addition to buying, ordering Time to Awaken, which they can get where?
Amazon.
Do you have a website for it as well?
I do. Oranadrich.com.
Oranadrich.com. Buy it, read it, share it. It's especially fantastic for young people who might not plow through The Bodies of Others, my book, or even, The Real Anthony Fauci, because those are kind of books for not 21-year-olds and teenagers, but this is very accessible. It's an easy, fast read. You've got to get it for everyone, but especially for those young adults in your life, or people who are not persuaded yet. You've got a very gentle voice.
Absolutely.
You're not haranguing them like Bobby and I are, and it's very good.
Or as Ed said, deepening the depression.
Right, exactly. It's a very uplifting read. It's very, very important. I hope that the wellness community, I hope that the mindfulness community engage with what Ms. Nadrich has put out here. And I personally feel eased in my mind and heartened and strengthened by having, even started on the journey of following Ms. Nadrich's argument in this book. It's so important. What else can people do? What do you want to leave them with?
I would encourage them to read the book and, really come to know what the practice of mindfulness is, to be curious about it, to really come with an open mind, and so that you can really come to understand what the journey of awakening really looks like. Do you know?
Yeah.
It's something that each and every one of us can embark on. And, I really do encourage everyone to try to awaken to what's going on right before our eyes. The only hope we have, Naomi, you talk about fear and the despondency that I'm sure we have both felt respectively, is there's a lot of things that I go into in the book that is so necessary for us to really look at and come to know and come to discover about ourselves. And I'll leave it with this: to come to know ourselves. We've heard a lot of things, whether it's biblical or to thine own self be true. If there isn't a desire to know who we are as human beings, as part of this collective humanity, who are we? Why are we here? And not be passive to the evolution of this life and to our humanity, what will really change fundamentally? Do you know? It really is incumbent upon each and every one of us to make that commitment to ourselves.
Right. Beautiful. Well, everyone, we have our marching orders, self-knowledge, self-awareness, and this amazing book, such a map to not acting out of fear. And I am persuaded by your hopeful vision that this is the time of a great awakening and not just a great catastrophe.
No,
so,
if I could just
please.
leave you with just reading this last thing. I read it last night at the end of my talk. Just a quote that I find very touching. It's by Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, the French philosopher. From the spirit of the earth, love is the most universal, the most tremendous, and the most mystical of cosmic forces. Love is the primal and universal psychic energy, Love is a sacred reserve of energy. It is like the blood of spiritual evolution. So when I think of the map that I want to go by for the evolution of this planet, it is based in love.
Beautiful. I love it. There you have it. The book is Time to Awaken, Changing the World with Conscious Awareness, Ora Nadrich. You know where to get it. Get it on Amazon, get it on oranadrich.com, and we'll update you about Ora's amazing work as we go along. She's our new wonderful friend and part of our community now. We're so grateful for her words of wisdom. Thank you all so much. And remember, thank you, Ora. And remember, you can find me at DailyClout.io. We'll be showcasing and promoting Ora's book there on the homepage. You can follow me on Dr. Naomi Wolf on Getter. Please continue to support us and absolutely rush out and buy and share this amazing book. And we'll have a book club about it. I think that would be wonderful, a group discussion.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone. Take care. Hey, everyone. It's Naomi Wolf of DailyClout, and I am asking you to please, if you like the video you just saw, support us, become a member, donate. You can send checks to P.O. Box 24, Millerton, New York, 12546, or go to DailyClout, DailyClout, become a member or donate. Thank you so much for your support. Every penny goes for paying our hardworking staff, paying hosting costs, and paying our lawyers who have been leading the fight to keep you safe and free, to keep the Constitution safe and to keep you free. Thank you so much.